Cologne, 1954. The biggest camera trade fair in the world. A German company unveils a new camera, and within hours, engineers from rival firms are standing in line just to hold it. One by one, they lift it to their eye. They turn the focusing ring. They feel the shutter release. And one by one, they understand. This is not something they can compete with. Several of those companies had been building their own rangefinder cameras for years. Some even launched rivals that tried to beat it head-on. But over the following years, one by one, they reportedly concluded that matching this camera was no longer a fight worth having. Not because the market disappeared, but because this single instrument had set the standard so impossibly high, so they ran the other way. They abandoned the rangefinder entirely and bet everything on a completely different kind of camera. What none of them could have predicted was that the camera they ran toward would eventually dethrone the very machine that had scared them away. There is a camera you look down into, one that makes the photographer disappear. This is the story of its opposite. A camera you raise to your eye and hold there. A precision instrument built to meet the world head-on, with nothing between you and what you see. Many have called it the most perfect camera ever made. This is the story of the Leica M3, Chapter 1. The instrument. The Leica M3 was made by Ernst Leitz in the small German town of Wetzlar, the same company that had invented the 35mm camera decades earlier. In 1954, at the Photokina trade fair in Cologne, they introduced a camera that many would come to regard as the pinnacle of that invention. Not just an improvement, but a culmination. It was a rangefinder camera, meaning it used a small optical window to measure distance and compose the image at the same time. But what made the M3 different from every rangefinder that came before was how completely it did everything right. Start with the mount. Every Leica before the M3 had used a screw mount. Slow, fiddly, easy to cross-thread. The M3 introduced a bayonet mount, the M mount, that locked a lens into place with a quick twist. It was faster, more precise, and it would go on to become one of the longest-lived lens mounts in the history of photography. Still in use today, more than 70 years later, than the viewfinder. Previous rangefinders had two separate windows, one for focusing, one for composing. The M3 combined them into one. You looked through a single bright eyepiece, and inside you saw crisp white frame lines showing exactly what the lens would capture, along with a small bright patch in the center for focusing. A combined rangefinder and viewfinder in a single window, with automatic parallax correction as you focused closer. The magnification was roughly 0.91 times life size, large enough that looking through the M3 felt almost like looking with your naked eye. And the body itself was machined from brass, assembled largely by hand, each one adjusted and tested individually. The shutter, the film advance, the rangefinder mechanism, all of it made to tolerances more often found in scientific instruments than in cameras. Perfection in a camera is not one thing done brilliantly. It is everything done right at the same time, with nothing left over and nothing missing. When you raised the M3 to your eye, you did not squint into a dim, cramped tunnel. The viewfinder was bright, almost startlingly so. Crisp white lines floated inside the image, showing you exactly where the edges of your photograph would fall. As you turned the focusing ring, a small double image in the center snapped together into one, and at that instant, you knew the subject was sharp. No mirror slapping up, no momentary blackout, no vibration. Just a calm, continuous view of the world, with a precise overlay telling you everything you needed to know, and the shutter itself was quiet. A firm, clean click, not a slap. The film advance, whether the early double stroke or the later single stroke, moved with a mechanical smoothness that photographers often compared to the action of a fine watch. Henri Cartier-Bresson, who used a Leica his entire career and was photographed with an M3 in the late 1950s, became the living embodiment of what many call the decisive moment. One shot, perfectly framed, at precisely the right instant, but the numbers and the specifications only tell you half of it. The other half is what it felt like in your hands. Every part of the M3 was machined, not stamped. Brass, not plastic. The tolerances were so fine that assembling one camera required skilled workers fitting each component by hand, testing and adjusting as they went. Pick up an M3 today, 70 years after it was made, and the film advance still moves with the same smooth resistance. The shutter still fires with the same clean authority. The rangefinder patch still snaps into focus with the same certainty. This is what photographers mean when they call the M3 perfect. Not that it had the most features, or the fastest shutter, or the widest lens selection, but that everything it did with a rightness that made every other camera feel like a compromise. It was not trying to do everything. It was trying to do one thing: let you see and capture a single moment, and do it so well that nothing in the process got in the way. More than 230,000 were made between 1954 and roughly 1966, and each one reportedly was held to the same standard. By the mid-1950s, the M3 had done something unusual. It had not simply won a market, it had by many accounts made the competition rethink the entire game. Japanese camera makers Nikon, Canon, and others had been building excellent rangefinder cameras of their own. The Nikon S series in particular was a formidable instrument, respected by professionals worldwide. But the story that is often told goes like this. After the M3 appeared at Photokina, several of these companies looked at what Leica had achieved and concluded that competing head-to-head in the rangefinder space was no longer a battle they could win, or at least not one worth fighting. The M3 had not beaten them with marketing or price. It had beaten them with precision. The viewfinder, the mount, the build, every part of it set a benchmark so high that catching up would take years, and by then Leica would have moved further still. So instead of trying to build a better rangefinder, they asked a different question. What if we build a different kind of camera entirely? That different camera was the single-lens reflex, the SLR. Nikon, in particular, is often credited with making this leap. The company had built the Nikon SP, a rangefinder widely considered among the finest ever made outside of Leica, designed specifically to challenge the M3, but after the SP fell short of unseating it, Nikon reportedly redirected its best engineers towards something new. And in 1959, 5 years after the M3 appeared, they introduced the Nikon F. We told that story in an earlier episode, the camera that would go on to dominate professional photography for decades. But what we did not say then is that many argue it was the M3 that pushed Nikon onto that path in the first place. The Leica M3 did not destroy its rivals. It did something stranger. It convinced them to leave the battlefield altogether and fight on entirely different ground. And in doing so, without intending to, without even knowing it, it helped give birth to the very technology that would one day take its throne. The single-lens reflex worked on a fundamentally different principle. Instead of a separate viewing window, it used a mirror inside the body to bounce the image from the taking lens up into a prism. So when you looked through the viewfinder, you were seeing through the very same lens that would expose the film. This meant something the rangefinder could never do. You saw exactly what the lens saw. Any lens. Wide, telephoto, macro, zoom. Whatever you mounted on the front, the viewfinder showed you the result. A rangefinder, for all its elegance, had limits. The bright line frames could only accommodate a few focal lengths. Close-up work was awkward. Telephoto lenses were hard to focus precisely through a separate window. The rangefinder showed you an approximation. The SLR showed you the truth, and there was something else. As lens technology evolved, faster glass, longer reach, more complex optics, the SLR could keep up effortlessly. The rangefinder could not. What Leica had built was a closed circle of perfection. What the SLR offered was an open road. By the 1970s, the shift was clear. The SLR had become the standard tool for professionals and amateurs alike. Nikon, Canon, Pentax, Minolta, the companies that had once tried to match Leica in the rangefinder, were now leading the world with single-lens reflexes. And the rangefinder, once the dominant form of serious photography, quietly stepped aside. This is the irony at the heart of the M3's story. It was so perfect that it scared its competitors into inventing something better. Not a better rangefinder, but a better idea. And that better idea, over the next 2 decades, made the rangefinder's limitations visible in a way they had never been before. The M3 did not fail. It did not decline. It simply stayed exactly as perfect as it had always been, while the world moved on to a kind of camera that could grow in ways the rangefinder never could. Perfection, it turns out, can be a kind of trap. When a machine is already complete, there is nowhere left for it to go. But the M3 did not disappear. The SLR took over the mainstream, but the Leica M never stopped being made. The M3 was followed by the M2, the M4, the M5, and eventually a line that continues to this day, digital now, but still built on the same M mount, the same rangefinder principle, the same fundamental idea that began in 1954. And the M3 itself, the original, is still sought after. More than 70 years after the last one left the factory, they change hands for prices that would buy a modern professional camera. Collectors want them, but so do working photographers, who pick them up not as relics, but as tools they still trust. Because the thing about a machine built to tolerance is that fine, is that it does not wear out the way ordinary cameras do. An M3 made in 1955 can still measure distance, still advance film, still fire its shutter with the same authority it had the day it was assembled. Time does not seem to touch it the way it touches other machines, and this is the paradox of the Leica M3. It was so perfect that it did not need to change, and because it did not change, the world moved past it. But because it was so perfect, it also could not die. The very completeness that kept it from evolving is the same completeness that keeps it alive. Pick one up today. The weight, the sound of the shutter, the way the rangefinder patch snaps into alignment, it all still feels right, in a way that very few machines from any era manage to feel. Not nostalgic, not quaint, just right. The SLR won the war. There is no question about that. But the M3 was never really defeated. It was simply passed by, the way a cathedral is passed by when a city builds a highway. The highway is faster, the cathedral is still standing. And there is something quietly remarkable about a machine that was built once, built right, and never needed to be built again. Think of the two cameras side by side. One you held at your waist and looked down into, a quiet box that made the photographer disappear, and let 100,000 photographs pile up in silence, unseen until long after their maker was gone. The other you raised to your eye and held steady, a precision instrument so complete that it scared an entire industry into running the other way, and so well made that it is still standing, unchanged, 70 years later. One reached the truth by vanishing. The other reached it by being impossibly, stubbornly exact. And yet both cameras were chasing the same impossible thing this whole series has been about, to make the moment matter more than the machine. The Rolleiflex did it by erasing the photographer. The Leica M3 did it by becoming so transparent, so seamlessly right, that the photographer forgot it was there. Two opposite paths to the same destination. A machine that gets out of the way of what it sees. If you made it this far, subscribe. Every episode, we tell the story behind one camera that changed everything. The obsessions, the gambles, the quiet revolutions, and the machines that refuse to be ordinary. Next time, a camera that asks the opposite question. Not how perfect can we make it, but how many people can we put it in the hands of? A company that took the single lens reflex and made it small enough, simple enough, and affordable enough for anyone to use. And in doing so, changed who got to be a photographer.